Hey guys, welcome back. Um, Today we're going to talk about a couple big groups of animals. We're going to talk reptiles, we're going to talk birds. We're going to cover a lot of ground, but it's pretty fun stuff. It's not like, something tragically boring. Groups of animals is generally pretty interesting to students and most people. So we're going to talk about non-bird reptiles. Then we're going to talk birds, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So when it comes to reptiles that are not birds, we of course have a few big groups. Our most diverse group is lizards and snakes. With lizards and snakes, it's going to be over 9,000 species that we've discovered so far. Both lizards and snakes are covered with overlapping scales, and so they can generally tolerate dry climates very well. Um, they also periodically shed their skin as they grow, but you probably already knew that. Scales are very good at locking in moisture, so it's a cool example of our transition that we've been looking at from aquatic to increasingly drier habitats. Our largest lizard, and the one that gets a little bit of attention in your book, is called the Komodo dragon. The Komodo dragon has a venomous bite, and we thought for a long time there was a little bit of disagreement about whether its bite had true venom in it or if it's just that the saliva of the Komodo dragon was so riddled with bacteria, really bad bacteria, that when a Komodo dragon would bite an animal, it would basically infect it with all these different strains of nasty bacteria, and then it would track it down and follow it until it died of an infection, and then it would eat it then. And thanks to a couple of old Komodo dragons that died in a zoo, they were able to extract their teeth and extract some venom glands and extract some venom and determine that it was actually venom. So that was kind of cool. So now we know it's truly venomous. Um, when it comes to our snakes, all of our snakes are predators, and they might not take very large prey. They might eat something small like bugs, but all snakes are predators. All snakes have teeth and a variety of really cool ways to get prey. So some of them, constrict them so they can't breathe. Other snakes have venom, and others have, different ways of getting food. So when it comes to your snake that has venom, this is kind of the icon of evolutionary achievement is this guy right here. If you ever get the chance to go to Reptile Gardens, check it out because they have a really good snake show that clearly explains the evolution of snake fangs, and it's very, very good. And they talk about snakes that have no fangs and just have teeth, and how that's kind of dangerous because they have to eat something that's still alive or still fighting them. And there's other teeth that other snake types that have like kind of rudimentary, simple fangs that don't have these really cool muscles and glands built in, but the fang has a little bit of venom, and the snake basically it'll have little fangs back here, and the snake will have to chew the venom into the prey, and it's really not that fancy. And then they have these guys which can like retract out these huge teeth, and they've got a gland that runs all the way down, and this gland way back in their cheek, complete with muscles, and they can voluntarily inject a venom into their prey. And so the line of proposed evolution of fangs is really one of the more complete ones and one of the more impressive ones. So I'd encourage you to check that out if you get a chance this summer. And so here's kind of the deal. We got, like I already told you about the gland, and then basically the canal or the tube or whatever you want to call it that's going to get that venom all the way out to the tooth. There are other teeth. There's the tongue, which it's going to do a lot of tasting the air with. It also has pits, which is going to help it sense temperature changes, sense its environment. It has movable upper and lower jaws. Some of them they can split that lower jaw out just a little bit to make a little more room. Um, there's scales, keep all the moisture inside in a really dry environment, and then they have a vertical pupil on the eye, and they say it's kind of a old wives' tale, I guess you could say, but they say that the venomous snakes have a vertical eye, or like a cat's eye, and non-venomous snakes have a round pupil. but I would rather not get that close to find out if that's true or not. And then one of the cool things that you're going to see in most snakes is this glottis, which is just a really cool deal. It's common for snakes to swallow prey that are larger than the diameter of the snake. And it kind of poses the question of, well, how are you going to breathe when you swallow something that's bigger than your head? And the answer is the glottis, this little flexible muscular tube. They can actually, a lot of snakes can just push that out to the side. And it's basically like having a snorkel. And then they can shove down, this giant guinea pig they're eating. And that little glottis just hangs out here and lets them breathe while they're eating something that's ridiculously large. So here's your venomous example in the Komodo dragon for the lizard. Its venom's not nearly as fancy as some of these snakes have, but it gets the job done. And so here's a couple of Komodo dragons eating a goat, and the goat's small enough prey that they can just kind of pin it down and kill it. And this is a Komodo dragon hunting and killing a water buffalo, and they actually do this. Um, this guy, they're going to be able to take him down, kill him, and eat him in really just no time at all. This guy basically sneaks up, bites him in the leg. The water buffalo walks away, and the dragon and others will chase this buffalo for days or weeks until that venom kills him and he dies of infection, and then they'll start to eat him. But this team that wrote this article for National Geographic found that the venom that was in the Komodo dragon would decrease the blood pressure, and it would expedite blood loss, and it would help to send a victim into shock quicker than it would if they were just biting it. And so they thought that would make the animal too weak to fight. So in the venom, some compounds that reduce the blood pressure were as potent as those found in the world's most venomous snake, Western Australia's inland taipan. So little more punch in that Komodo dragon's venom than we were giving him credit for a long time. Kind of a cool, kind of gross animal. So let's look at some other non-bird reptiles, because surely snakes and lizards aren't the whole story. There's also turtles. And it can be kind of tricky to tell the difference between turtles and tortoises. But here's the deal. Turtles are going to be partly aquatic or entirely aquatic. This is a sea turtle. In South Dakota, we have a few turtles, and you're generally going to find them near the water. They live in cattle ponds and creeks and rivers and all sorts of places. And they're going to spend a lot of time in the water, eating in the water, and they do come onto land occasionally. Now, this is a tortoise. Tortoises don't have to live anywhere near the water. They can live in very, very dry places, even deserts, and both of these guys are really primarily going to be eating vegetation. They might occasionally eat some little animal matter they can get, but for the most part, it's vegetation. So there's 300 species or more of turtles that we know about right now. They have a bony keratin-covered shell, which you guys are all familiar with, that is directly attached to their skeleton. Their vertebrae are built right into the shell, so it's not like the turtle house they can crawl out of like in the cartoons you saw when you were kids, but you already know that. And we already talked about what they eat. Crocodilians, those include crocodiles, alligators, and caiman, which are these really cool crocodiles in South America. And these guys are predators that are primarily in the water. They do come up onto land to make nests and some other stuff like that, but really they're primarily aquatic predators. And crocodiles have a four-chambered heart, just like birds do. Now, when it comes to chambers on the heart, that's a really cool story. And from this evolutionary picture of moving from aquatic life to land life, it's actually kind of cool to look at it from that view too. So we're going to start from aquatic and go to land-based. This is a fish's heart. A fish's heart is one chamber, and blood comes in from the body. It goes into what's called an atrium. It drains down to a ventricle, and the ventricle pumps it to the gills. Gills, body, atrium, ventricle, gills. Cool? It's just a pretty simple setup. One chamber. That's it. Pumps the heart, uh, pumps that blood out. And gills are very, very efficient countercurrent system, and so they don't need too much fanciness there. Now, this is an amphibian heart. Little different, because now we have lungs. So we have to be able to send the blood to the lungs, and we have to be able to send the blood to the system or the body, brain, muscles, that kind of stuff. And so here we're going to get two different atria. That's an atrium, that's an atrium, and the ventricle is only one chamber. And so the bad thing about the ventricle being one chamber is you're going to get a mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. And so it's not really going to be the most efficient design, but it's efficient enough, to keep them alive. So that we went from fish having a one-chambered heart to amphibians basically having a three-chambered heart. 1, 2, 3. Now when you get to reptiles, it's cool and kind of weird because this is your turtle. It's sort of a three-chambered heart, but not really. We got the left atrium, we got the right atrium, we have the ventricle, but starting to grow up that ventricle is a septum. And so it's not complete. If it went all the way up, we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4. We'd have four-chambered heart like humans have. But in most of our reptiles, except for crocodiles, we're going to have a three-chambered heart. So 1, 2, 3. We get oxygenated blood from the lungs, deoxygenated blood from the body. It mixes in here and gets pushed out all these vessels. So again, it's really not that efficient because our oxygenated or deoxygenated still kind of get a little mixed up in that ventricle. Now this is the crocodile heart. We're getting a lot closer to what humans are going to look like now. Right ventricle, left ventricle, separated. Right atrium, left atrium, separated. Oxygenated blood, deoxygenated blood, separated. Efficient, and that is very, very cool. And this is the bird. Almost, do I want to say identical? Almost identical to yours and I's. This is craziness up here because birds' lungs are tricked out like you wouldn't believe, but the bird heart is very much like ours. Atrium, atrium, ventricle, ventricle. Oxygenated blood on one side, deoxygenated blood on one side. All the deoxygenated stuff gets pumped to the lungs. From the lungs, comes back to the heart. Now it's oxygenated, boom, to the body. And we can get it back from the body and send it back to the lungs. And it's a very, very, very efficient system. And here you can see there's branches off to all these different lungs all over this bird. The whole bird is lungs. It's just insane. And on that note, I've posted a video explaining to you avian lungs. And it's actually somebody else explaining it. I first learned about bird lungs in college in ornithology, and it just blew my mind. And I have no idea how something as amazing as bird lungs could evolve, but they are the best. Their lungs are only exposed to oxygen-rich air. They are better than ours. They are so much more efficient than our lungs. Because when you and I breathe in and out, deoxygenated and oxygenated blood, they all just mix together, in these big bags we call lungs. And a bird, it's like a linear, like 2-cycle system, like a little engine, where those lungs are only exposed to fresh air. And the old air is stored in a separate chamber, and it is just insane. But it allows them to fly. Flying takes a lot of energy, and you gotta be really efficient to fly. So birds, they are the top, in my opinion. I think those things are cool. And so here's kind of a diagram of that. The video will explain it better, so please watch the video that I post for you. But here's a brief diagram of basically what looks like a parrot or something. But the air comes in, and you've got the lungs here. But you have air sacs, 2 of them in the abdomen. You have thoracic air sacs, 2 in the posterior, 2 in the anterior. You have a clavicular air sac, just 1 of them, and then cervical air sacs, 2 of them. And so when they inhale, they will fill different sacs, and when they exhale, the deoxygenated blood will move into different sacs, the deoxygenated air rather, and the oxygenated air will move forward. And then their next inhalation, next exhalation, the bad stuff moves out, the good stuff moves in, more good stuff moves in. And so you get this really cool system of air going here, 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 out. And so for every breath a bird takes, it's kind of like he's getting two breaths, and it's insane. So watch the video because this lady explains it way better than I do. But I still don't know if I really have a grasp of it even after learning about it a few different times. But bird lungs, they're the best. So speaking of birds, what separates birds from other reptiles? And we put them in with reptiles, because we think birds came from dinosaurs and they have their scaly legs, but most of your birds don't really have teeth. There's a gene we can turn on in a chicken that's not recessed and make them grow teeth, which I think is kind of cool, but birds don't really have teeth. What makes birds birds is they have feathers, and feathers are awesome. Filamentous keratin structures, supposedly they're derived from scales. I'll let you be the judge there. Feathers are very intricate. They have hooks on their hooks on their hooks, and all those hooks fit together like Velcro and keep the feather strong, yet lightweight. And they're very specific and they're very, very cool features. And birds are oiling them all the time with this little gland they have on their back. And they get a bunch of oil on their beak and then run it over their feathers to keep those feathers in good shape. But feathers are awesome. They do everything. I mean, they help a bird maintain the proper temperature, which slows the loss of metabolic heat. It allows birds to be endothermic and very successful at that, whereas a lot of reptiles are ectothermic. It helps keep birds dry by shedding water. Um, they play a role in courtship because some of the feathers are very colorful, like in turkeys and peacocks. And obviously, they play a huge role in flight. So, feathers are great, great structures. So, when it comes to birds, some other things you want to know. Most of our birds are surprisingly lightweight. You'll sometimes hear people say that birds' bones are hollow. That's not really true. It's more like the bird's long bones are strengthened by like little interconnecting cross bridges of bone, but they're not like one solid cylinder of long bone like ours is. They're still strong, but by having little branches of bone connecting the tube on the inside, they're not entirely hollow, but there's a lot of airspace, and so they are incredibly lightweight. Being lightweight is very important if you want to fly. They have no bladder because water is very heavy. If you have a bladder full of water, you're going to be heavy. And so they actually just mix liquid waste. It all just stays in the digestive system. And that's actually the reason bird poop is white. If you've ever been curious about that, like, hey, a lot of animal poop I see is brown, but when a bird poops on my car, it's white. What's going on there? That's actually the liquid compounds like urea and uric acid that they're losing, and their nitrogenous waste that they're losing that would normally be urine is mixed with their feces and all comes out as one lovely fluid like substance on your car. And it's generally white with some other fun colors in there, greens and browns too. No teeth because teeth are heavy, or because maybe you don't really need teeth when you're just eating insects. You can kind of just pick bugs apart, but there you go. Birds have a much larger brain to body ratio than lizards do. That's not to say that they're necessarily intrinsically more smart, but it does mean that they need a lot of coordination and really good eyesight if you're going to maintain flight without, killing yourself. And so I threw a picture of a bird brain on there, and what I wanted you to see was they have their brain. This is the dorsal view, and this is the ventral view. So the front of the bird, back of the bird. They have cerebellum, like you and I have, the tiny brain. It's going to take care of a lot of stuff you don't want to have to think about all the time, like the brainstem does, heart rate, breathing, that kind of stuff. And then they're going to have some really cool stuff. This is the cerebrum here and here. That's thinking, making decisions, that kind of stuff. The light blue gray guy right here, and right here, and right here, that's vision. And this guy, that's vision too. And this little teeny tiny guy up here, that's smell. And so a bird's brain is, to simplify it, is dedicated in a huge part to seeing and making a decision. That's when you look at the volume of brain that is used just to process sight and making a decision based on the sight. That is basically what a bird brain does, and they're very, very good at it. And you need to be very good at seeing and coordinating your decisions when you see if you're going to fly and not hit trees and that kind of stuff. Or other birds, birds, they can fly in a flock and not hit each other. Um, Humans can't even make it down an aisle with a shopping cart without hitting each other at half a mile an hour. And birds, of course, can go zooming by in a flock, so it's kind of cool. For bird reproduction, they have the cloaca, which is right there. Before, I've called it kind of crudely the Swiss Army knife of body holes. It does everything you need a body hole to do. Fertilization is a bit of a trick though, because the cloaca is on the underside of a female and the underside of a male. And so basically, he has sperm packets kind of in his cloaca and in what's called a cloacal kiss. They touch cloacas and he shoots this little sperm packet in, and then if all goes well, she'll be fertilized and she'll have chicks. But it can be a little bit tricky because trying to get those two lined up is no easy task. Female will then lay eggs after she's fertilized with nutrients inside of the eggs, which we've talked about quite a bit already. And those nutrients will sustain the embryos until they hatch. And it's different, there's precocial and altricial chicks. And some chicks, let me think for a second. Altricial is all naked and blind. Yeah, so altricial chicks are like robin chicks where they're born naked and blind and they need a lot of help from mom. And precocial chicks are like pheasants and they're born and they have feathers and they can see and they can run and they can catch their own food. And mom and dad don't have to do a darn thing. Just walk across the cornfield and the little babies follow you. And so there are a lot of different uh, varieties of how long they're in the egg and how much development's done in the egg and out of the egg. So with avian diversity, to our knowledge, there's over 10,000 living bird species, which is a lot. About half of them are perching birds. Perching birds are like little stuff that comes to bird feeders. Jays, sparrows, starlings, robins, cardinals, those kinds of things. Hummingbirds, of course, there are many other orders aside from perching birds. Certainly, hawks and vultures and those kinds of things, they're going to get their own orders, but hummingbirds get a lot of attention for a couple of reasons. One, they're pretty abundant, 450 species. Two, they are pollinators of plants, which is a really cool role that not a lot of birds play. Three, they're super small and adorably colored. Like, look at how cute that thing is. That's crazy. And finally, their shoulders are super weird. Most bird shoulders are like up, down, fly forward. That's all you can do. Hummingbird shoulders are a lot like human shoulders. They can rotate, they can flex them in different angles, and that allows hummingbirds to fly backwards, hover, and even fly upside down. And so they get a lot of attention because basically they're just cooler than everybody else. Another thing that separates birds from like lizards and snakes and other animals is that a lot of birds will make a seasonal migration. And you see this, like you live in South Dakota, you see the Canada geese fly in every winter and then they fly back every spring and that kind of stuff. So you know how that works and you know why they do it. There's seasonally abundant food, safe places to mate, safe places to raise chicks, that kind of stuff. That's the reason that birds migrate. Penguins and ratite birds cannot fly. Ratite birds are birds that are primarily just walking around. Emus, ostriches, kiwis, rheas, and cassowaries, they just walk. They can't fly even if they want to. They still have wings and pretty decent sized wings. They still have feathers, but they just have these big old muscly legs, and that's good enough to get the job done. So, quick note on migration. They recently radio collared a bird and got the longest recorded nonstop flight for migration, and it was a female godwit. And godwit's a shorebird. You can tell from that really cool bill. Look at that thing. That it's spending a lot of time in the water picking up little things to eat, and it was recently found to have flown 7,000 miles without stopping, and it made it from Alaska to New Zealand. Wow. So between friends, can we just say it crossed the planet? I mean, really? Like, that's, oh my gosh. So 7,000 miles, no food, no water, just burning the fuel that it ate in Alaska. And wow, wowie, wow, wow. Okay, cool. So we're gonna stop at mammals. Mammals are a whole different animal, and we'll get to that next time. I've had this video run plenty long, so Uh, Thanks for your time.